So I've typed in to give us willful blindness under the Albanese government, and this is what we're going to get from ChatGPT. Let's have a look and see what it says.
Oh, you want specific to Albanese's government, not the vague governments do government things fluff. Fine. Here's the actual timeline and decision points people point to when they accuse Labour, 2022, present, of willful blindness, plus what the government says it did instead. What critics mean by willful blindness under Albanese. It usually boils down to, warnings existed, but the government moved slowly until a major shock forced fast action. 1. Threat level, downgraded early, upgraded later. November 28, 2022, the Albanese government publicly welcomed ASIO's decision to lower the national terrorism threat level from probable to possible. August 5, 2024, Albanese then announced ASIO's decision to raise it back from possible to probable, and convened National Security Committee/Cabinet briefings the same morning. +1. ASIO's DG said the security environment was degrading and pointed to faster radicalization and increased extremism. Critics' blindness argument, the 2022 posture signaled downplaying, then 2024 forced a public reversal. Government's defense, ASIO sets the threat level, government responds to ASIO's assessment. 2. Prevention strategy came later, and is whole of society by design. January 17, 2025, Albanese government launched a Safer Australia, Counter-Terrorism and Violent Extremism Strategy 2025, explicitly emphasizing prevention and politically motivated violence, alongside a major prevention funding commitment. Critics' angle. Strategies and funding don't help if operational/legal gaps still exist or if enforcement is slow. Government's angle. Prevention is the point, because arrests alone don't stop the pipeline. 3. Anti-Semitism policy. Envoy appointed, plan delivered, sat on the desk criticism. July 9, 2024, Albanese appointed Gillian Segal as Australia's first special envoy to combat anti-Semitism. asica.gov.au. July 2025, Segal delivered the plan. It was released publicly July 10, 2025 with 13 recommendations and 49 actions. +1. December 2025, ABC reported critics saying the plan had effectively sat for months while anti-Semitism worsened, and that government action was too little, too late. ABC. The government later published a formal response document, eliminating anti-Semitism. This is one of the cleanest delay claims, because it's literally a dated plan and a dated response, and critics explicitly frame it as months of inaction. ABC +1. 4. After the Bondi terror attack, Review vs. Royal Commission, the accountability fight. December 18, 2025, Albanese announced tougher anti-Semitism measures and tougher hate speech laws targeting people promoting violence, while conceding the government could have done more. ABC. December 29, 2025, instead of a royal commission, Albanese set up an independent Commonwealth review led by Dennis Richardson. The terms of reference explicitly include what agencies knew and when, information sharing, actions taken, and whether more could have prevented the attack. PM&C +2 ABC +2. Early January 2026, multiple reports say Albanese has been under heavy pressure and has softened his earlier resistance to a federal/joint royal commission. Critics' blindness argument, choosing an internal style review first looks like containment and delay. Government's argument, the Richardson Review is designed to examine exactly what was missed and what could have been done. PM&C +1. 5. Why didn't you recall Parliament immediately? News.com.au reported the opposition attacked Albanese for not recalling Parliament before Christmas to rush Bondi package laws, hate speech, gun control, visas, while Albanese argued the laws were complex and needed to be drafted properly. News.com.au. Guardian/SBS reporting says Labour has since moved toward an early recall to legislate hate preacher laws, gun buybacks. The Guardian +1. This is the classic politics of crisis. One side yells do it now, the other side says we'd like it not to collapse in the High Court. 6. ISIS-linked returns, repatriation versus self-managed returns controversy. A Home Affairs document notes October 2022 repatriation of 4 women and 13 children from Syria, supported by Commonwealth/State Services. Guardian reported, December 2025, the government had no plan to repatriate the remaining cohort, despite U.S. warnings, noting Australia's 2 missions, 2019 and 2022. The Guardian. The coalition has attacked Labour over alleged self-managed returns, partisan claim, and Senate estimates debates have referenced self-managed return issues. +1. How this connects to your blindness framing. Critics argue inconsistent or unclear settings on high-risk cohorts. Supporters argue controlled repatriation can reduce risk versus leaving people in camps indefinitely. The specific Albanese government takeaway. If you're arguing willful blindness, the most specific, documentable hooks are 2022 threat downgrade, government welcoming it. 2. 2024 threat upgrade, public reversal, +1. Envoy plan delivered July 2025 public claims it sat for months, government response only later. Bondi, review first, Royal Commission resisted, then softened under pressure. PM&C +2. Parliament recall timing fight, delay versus due process, news.com.au +1. That's the concrete spine. Everything else is commentary. Latest coverage on Albanese government's Bondi/antisemitism/terror response. News.com.au. Albanese finally considers joint royal commission with NSW after Bondi attacks. Today. The Guardian. Police commissioner says extension not about stopping free speech as it happened. Today. News.com.au. Recalling Parliament before Christmas a fair timeline, Susenle says. Albanese pro. You have not once mentioned pro-Palestine protest, radical Islamic ideology or Anthony Albanese's pro-Palestine activism. Make it short and sharp. Thought for 26s. Fine. Specific to Albanese's government, not the vague "a government exists" version. Pro-Palestine protests with anti-Semitic chants, Sydney Opera House, October 9, 2023. Filmed chants included explicit anti-Jewish abuse. Albanese publicly condemned it. Critics cite this as an early, public red flag moment that wasn't followed by fast, hard deterrence. The Guardian. Radical Islamist ideology is still a live threat. ASIO's 2024 assessment says Sunni violent extremism remains the greatest religiously motivated violent extremist threat in Australia, even as the overall threat mix is broader now. ONI.gov.au. Albanese's long pro-Palestine political history. ABC reports he co-founded / was a convener of the Parliamentary Friends of Palestine group as a backbencher. Critics argue this background shaped Labour's tone and risk tolerance around protests, even when extremists piggybacked the moment. ABC. Too late admission after a major terror shock. After the Bondi terror attack, Albanese announced tougher hate speech measures and conceded his government could have taken stronger action beforehand. That's basically the "we should have acted earlier" line critics call willful blindness. ABC. Recent coverage on Albanese, protests, antisemitism, and extremist risk. The Australian. Anthony Albanese softens stance on Bondi massacre. Royal Commission, defence experts push for probe. Today. The Guardian. NSW MP asks Home Affairs Minister to investigate potential foreign interference after Israel targets him in dossier. Today. Sources. Ending. ChatGPT can make mistakes. Check important info.
So I asked ChatGPT, why didn't the Albanese government do enough? And this was the reply.
Because it was easier not to until Bondi made not doing enough politically unbearable. Here's the more critical and still evidence-based read. He had a plan and didn't adopt it. Albanese's own anti-Semitism envoy, Gillian Siegel, delivered a sweeping plan in July 2025, and by mid-December it still hadn't been formally responded to, despite Jewish leaders saying it could have helped stop a permissive culture. That's not we didn't know, that's delay. ABC +1. He chose incremental law first, then had to redo it. Labor tightened federal hate speech laws in February 2025, then ABC reports they were used only 4 times and the government now wants to rework them after Bondi. That looks like too cautious, too narrow, too late. ABC +1. He avoided the big accountability hit. After Bondi, he rejected a royal commission and went for a closed-door review with narrower powers. Critics say that's political damage control, not transparency. He didn't want to light the protest fuse. Clamping down hard earlier would have collided with the protest climate, including pro-Palestine rallies, and sparked free speech blowback. You can see how combustible it is even now, with protest restrictions and groups openly planning to defy them. The Guardian. He's openly admitted the core truth: he could have done more while announcing tougher measures. Translation: they judged the political/legal cost of going harder earlier wasn't worth it, until it was.
So I asked ChatGPT, did Albanese's activism betray him? And this is the answer. And I asked it to be critical and to include Tony Burke.
Tony Burke chose caution over confrontation until Bondi made caution look like negligence. Here's the blunt, Burke intertwined version. Burke has been the guy holding the levers since July 28, 2024, Home Affairs plus Immigration plus Cybersecurity, and leader of the House. If you're claiming the government didn't act, that sits right in his portfolio. +1. They had the anti-Semitism plan in July 2025 and still didn't front a full response until December 18, 2025, after the Bondi attack pressure cooker. That's not we didn't know. That's delay while the temperature rose. Burke publicly said the new hate speech laws would go to the constitutional limit. Translation: earlier, they weren't willing to push that hard. The Guardian +1. Albanese's own line was basically, the laws are complex, high court risk, needs careful drafting, which is the politicians' universal excuse for we didn't want the fight yet. News.com.au +1. After Bondi, they suddenly wanted visa cancellation powers for vilification/hate symbols, bans on extremist imports, and new offenses. Funny how too hard becomes urgent when the political cost flips. And those are Home Affairs powers, Burke's desk. +1. Pro-Palestine protest heat matters here. NSW protest restrictions are being extended, and pro-Palestine groups are openly planning to defy them. Labor's federal response has been shaped by not wanting to inflame that street politics environment while also trying to look tough on extremism. The Guardian. So why didn't he? Because Albanese plus Burke bet they could manage it with softer steps in messaging, and avoid a free speech/protest blow-up and legal blowback, until the Bondi attack made that bet look disastrously optimistic. ABC +1. Sources. Willful blindness, not caution, has to be in the narrative. Thought for 20s. Because Albanese and Tony Burke chose willful blindness until the price tag changed. Not caution. selective seeing, selective urgency. They had a roadmap and still sat on it. Gillian Siegel's plan to combat anti-Semitism was provided to government in July 2025 and released publicly July 10, 2025. The government's formal response posture only hardened in December 2025, after the Bondi outrage. That's not a lack of options, it's choosing delay. Burke basically admitted they weren't pushing as hard as they could. On December 19, 2025, he said the new hate speech laws would go to the constitutional limit. If you can go to the limit now, you could have tried earlier. They didn't. That's a political choice, not physics. Albanese publicly owned the failure, without explaining it. When pressed, why haven't you done more until now, he defaulted to the classic non-answer, we could always have done more, while announcing the tougher package. That's a confession with the paperwork missing. +1. Burke's portfolio means Burke owns the inaction. Since becoming Home Affairs Minister, Burke has had the levers, security architecture, listing regimes, visa settings. The post-Bondi sudden sprint sits on his desk, which makes the earlier slow walk look less like oversight and more like willful avoidance of the fight. The Guardian +1. And yes, politics was in the room. I need Australian government's willful blindness towards terrorism in Australia. The Guardian +1. And yes, politics was in the room. Albanese's long, public association with pro-Palestinian politics, e.g. creating the Parliamentary Friends of Palestine, hands opponents an easy narrative. He didn't want to light up the protest front while trying to look balanced, so he underpowered the response until crisis forced a harder line. Here's the no-crap, critical version, with Burke actually in it. 1. Airport welcome optics. Burke personally greeted arrivals from Gaza at Sydney Airport, reported as 40 to 50 people. That's not routine ministerial admin, it's a political photo op dressed up as compassion. Critics say it looked like virtue signaling while the government was simultaneously being hammered over imported conflict and screening. Skynews.com.au+1. 2. ISIS brides issue, the meeting that screams plausible deniability. ABC reports Senate estimates documents show Burke met Save the Children months before 2 women and 4 children linked to ISIS fighters returned in late September 2025. ABC key bits from the departmental readout, per ABC. Burke said the government had no plan to get Australians out of the camp at this time and didn't want to be seen as paying to have them smuggled out. ABC. The readout also says he asked officials to leave the room for a frank discussion, and it records that he said there may be a way to achieve the outcome without government undertakings. ABC. Handwritten notes by the Home Affairs Secretary referenced TB and a cement to find a way, raised by the coalition as evidence of involvement. ABC. Burke's response, he says the notes prove the opposite, claiming the request was refused and there was no repatriation and no assistance. ABC. That's the core willful blindness smell, meet privately, discuss away, keep it deniable, then insist you weren't involved. ABC. 3. The bigger pattern, politics over clarity. Australia can do repatriations when it wants to, and the federal court/Guardian reporting basically said it would be relatively straightforward if there were political will. The same reporting points to political backlash as a reason governments back off. The Guardian so when Burke plays nothing to see here while the issue burns, that's not mere caution, it's willful blindness to the political and security consequences of half-truth messaging. Bottom line. Burke's behavior across these two issues reads like maximum optics when it's safe, airport welcomes, maximum deniability when it's radioactive, ISIS-linked returns. That's exactly the kind of willful blindness that destroys trust and invites the next crisis. Why would Albanese deny a federal royal commission? Be as critical as possible. Thought for 18s. Because a federal royal commission is the one inquiry format Albanese and Tony Burke can't control, and it would drag their government and their agencies into months of public, sworn, headline-generating testimony. What they chose instead was the Dennis Richardson Independent Commonwealth Review with a fixed deadline, end of April 2026, and a narrower remit. PM&C plus one Burke publicly called a royal commission not the right approach. ABC Labour's defense, repeated in reporting, is that the review is faster and more appropriate than a sprawling commission. Plus one. Now the critical reasons he denied it. Damage control. A royal commission can compel ministers and officials, put them under oath, and force documents into daylight. That's the last thing a government wants right after a national security failure, because the story becomes who ignored what, when. Labour opted for a faster, narrower pathway instead. The Guardian plus one. Narrative control. Royal commissions are public theatre with subpoenas. Reviews are quieter, more technical, and easier to steer away from politically lethal side questions. That's exactly why victims' families and others demanded the commission. PBS plus one. Avoiding exposure of intelligence methods and interagency mess, a commission risks airing operational failures and sensitive sources. The government framed the Richardson Review as the vehicle to check whether agencies could have averted the attack without turning it into an open courtroom. Reuters plus one. Avoiding a protest/anti-Semitism political minefield, a commission would inevitably roam into the protest climate, radicalization pipelines, and government decisions about when to crack down. That's politically radioactive, especially when Labour is already under pressure for acting late. ABC plus one. Time and elections, royal commissions drag on. Governments hate long inquiries that drip-feed ugly findings for a year. A review with an April 2026 deadline is a lot more convenient. PM&C plus one. And yes, the pressure worked. By January 6, 2026, Albanese stopped ruling it out, signaling a potential backflip.